Persian Gulf. The air smells like engine exhaust and warm brine, which is just another way of saying it smells exactly like it did yesterday, and the day before that, and every day of this deployment for the past 11 weeks. The USS Laboon, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, is moving through the northern Gulf at roughly 3 knots, the nautical equivalent of a brisk walking pace, because the engineering team below decks is 40 minutes into a scheduled maintenance cycle on the port shaft seal. 1 shaft, 3 knots, reduced maneuverability. The kind of operational window that makes planning officers nervous and adversary intelligence analysts reach for their phones. Somewhere in that window, someone reached for theirs. An IRGC naval commander has decided that tonight is the night. The plan is elegant in the way that plans always look elegant before contact with reality. Launch the SH-3 Sea King helicopter before dawn. Fly it low and fast across the water. Approach the Laboon from her port quarter, where sensor geometry is momentarily degraded by the maintenance configuration. Make aggressive passes at close range, record everything, and be back on the deck of the IRGCN frigate before sunrise. Tehran would have its propaganda footage by sunrise. The American destroyer would be forced to react, to maneuver, to show some visible sign of concern. That sign of concern is worth more than its weight in gold to the people who produce the Islamic Republic's Defense Ministry press releases. It is a real plan. It required real effort. The commander is not a fool. He is simply operating with approximately 46 years of accumulated institutional disadvantage and a helicopter that was factory new when the first ABBA song hit the charts. The SH-3 lifts off. 12 seconds later, the USS Laboon already knows. Here is the thing about operating an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer in the Persian Gulf in 2025. You are never, under any circumstances, not being watched by your own sensors. The SPY-1D phased array radar on Laboon's superstructure does not sleep, does not blink, and does not require coffee to function at 2 in the morning. Its pedigree traces back to the Cold War requirement of simultaneously tracking hundreds of Soviet cruise missiles terminal phase. On a good day, it can track a ballistic missile warhead separating from its booster at 60,000 feet in the upper atmosphere. Tonight, it is watching a helicopter. The SH-3 Sea King Ors, Iranian Naval Air Force registration, IRGCN, operated, manufactured in 1972 by Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation. Originally sold to the Imperial Iranian Navy under the Foreign Military Sales Program during the Nixon administration, Tehran appears on the SPY-1D display as something between a radar return and an editorial comment. The track designation populates on the CIC screen before the helicopter has cleared the frigate's flight deck perimeter. The Aegis combat system classifies the contact, assigns it a track number, calculates its flight profile, and produces a threat assessment in approximately the time it takes a human operator to glance at the screen and reach for the radio. The CIC watch officer looked at the track. He looked at his coffee. He looked back at the track. Track India 477, rotary wing, bearing 042, range 11 nautical miles, speed approximately 90 knots, altitude 200 feet. He set the coffee down. Probable SH-3, IRGCN, a pause. Mark it, log it, wake me up if anything changes. Nothing was going to change in any way that mattered. He knew this. The Aegis system knew this. The only entity in the northern Persian Gulf who did not know this was the SH-3's crew. Before we get to the part where the mismatch becomes impossible to ignore, we should spend a moment with the Laboon's actual tactical situation, because this is where the IRGCN commander's timing is, in a strictly technical sense, better than it has any right to be. The port shaft seal maintenance had begun earlier that night. Standard scheduled work, nothing unusual, nothing rushed. At 3 knots on the starboard shaft only, Laboon's maneuvering envelope was constrained. A hard turn to port, the kind of maneuver you want available if an incoming contact requires you to unmask your forward VLS cells, would require emergency restart of the port shaft, approximately 90 seconds under ideal conditions. Running a reduced mid-watch crew, you're not operating under ideal conditions. The SH-3 was approaching from the port quarter. Whether by genuine operational intelligence or fortunate coincidence, The commander had selected the one window in Laboon's watch schedule where a rapid portside maneuver required extra seconds. For perhaps 60 seconds, certainly no more than 90, the tactical calculus was marginally more complicated than it would have been 2 hours earlier or later. That is real. The commander found a real window. Credit where it is due. The tactical action officer logged the approach vector, noted the maintenance state, and arrived at the same conclusion the Aegis system had already reached. The SH-3 was not a credible threat under any circumstances, including these. The port shaft situation was a procedural footnote, not a crisis. The Mk-45 gun, the CIWS, and the SM-2 VLS cells were all fully operational. The engineering team downstairs was doing their job, and the morning watch had 90 slightly complicated seconds ahead of them. The 90 seconds passed. The port shaft came back online. The engineering team logged completion. They had no knowledge that a helicopter was inbound. When told about it over breakfast, one of them asked whether it was interesting. The answer was, not especially. Now let us talk about the SH-3 Sea King because it deserves its own moment. The Sikorsky SH-3 entered service with the United States Navy in 1961 and was, by the standards of that era, a genuinely impressive machine. It recovered Apollo astronauts from the Pacific. It served with distinction in multiple conflicts. By the mid-1970s, it was the backbone of U.S. shipborne naval aviation. The year is 2025. The Iranian Naval Air Force has been operating these same helicopters since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, when the new government inherited the Shah's military hardware along with everything else. For 46 years, Iranian aviation technicians have performed what can only be described as a heroic maintenance effort to keep aircraft flying that Sikorsky stopped manufacturing replacement parts for during the Reagan administration. The APN-130 Doppler navigation radar, the UHF communication suite, the rotor head assembly. All of it traces back to a supply chain that effectively ceased to exist around the time the original Ghostbusters was in theaters. The helicopter approaching the Laboon tonight is not, by any NATO standard, in regulation airworthy condition. 3 of the 7 warning indicators have been physically disconnected, not because the underlying issues were resolved, but because replacement components have not been available since the Shah was signing procurement contracts. The cyclic stick vibrates with a resonance the crew stopped reporting long ago because maintenance forms go nowhere productive. The main rotor blades are carrying approximately 400 flight hours against a recommended service ceiling of 350. The twin General Electric T-58 turboshaft engines remain extraordinary pieces of engineering for 1961. They move through the Gulf air like a pair of retired marathon runners who have decided at age 70 to give the whole thing one final ambitious try. Admirable, concerning, moving in its way. And here is the detail making the electronic warfare officer in Laboon's CIC genuinely delighted to be at work at 2 in the morning. The SH-3's APN-130 Doppler radar is radiating freely on its standard operating frequency. Zero emissions control. Broadcasting its position, velocity vector, and complete technical parameters to every electronic warfare receiver within 150 nautical miles. With the relaxed confidence of a man who has forgotten there is a microphone in the room. "Are they using any MCON at all, San?" the EW officer asked. The petty officer at the SLQ-32 console shook his head slowly, with the expression of a man receiving unexpectedly good news. "Sir, I could intercept this with a Radio Shack scanner from 1987, navigation radar, comms package, rotor harmonic signature. I have more data on this aircraft than they probably have on themselves. Record everything." "Already recording everything, sir." A pause. "This is the best Tuesday of my entire deployment. Let us establish what the Laboon's AN/SLQ-32 V3 electronic warfare suite is actually doing while the SH-3 continues its approach, because this section matters more than most audiences appreciate. While the helicopter conducts what its crew believes is an intimidation approach, the SLQ-32 is compiling a comprehensive electronic autobiography of every radiating system on that aircraft. The APN-130's pulse repetition frequency, pulse width, scan rate, and frequency drift are cataloged and cross-referenced against the threat library. The UHF radio frequency, modulation type, and power output are recorded with timestamp precision. The rotor harmonic signature, a function of the T-58's specific mechanical wear state, is logged for future acoustic cross-referencing. The helicopter crew believes they are projecting force. They are, in the most technically accurate possible description, writing a user manual for how to defeat them. The collection does not stop at the helicopter. Every time the IRGCN frigate's search radar sweeps toward the Laboon, that emission is logged. The fire control radar parameters, the communication frequencies between the frigate and the helicopter, the coordination protocol, or, as it develops tonight, the conspicuous absence of any formal protocol because the helicopter and the frigate are coordinating via unencrypted voice on a UHF frequency the SLQ-32 has on primary intercept. All of it flows into the threat library and formats for Link 16 transmission to every U.S. Navy asset in the Gulf. By the time the SH-3 is 6 miles out, Combined Maritime Forces Command has a current electronic order of battle update for the IRGCN helicopter detachment, not the nominal specifications for a 1972 SH-3. The actual specifications for this specific aircraft tonight in its current maintenance state with its current faults on its current frequencies. The adversary thinks they are conducting a harassment operation. The U.S. Navy is conducting a data collection operation, or both things are happening simultaneously in the same piece of airspace, and only one party is aware of both. The SH-3 began its first close approach, 90 knots, 200 feet altitude, passing down the Laboon's port side at approximately 350 meters. The crew was photographing the destroyer's topside equipment, the Spy 1D arrays, the VLS cells, the communications masts. Standard collection. The helicopter decelerated as it passed amidships, close enough for the crew to see personnel on the weather deck. On the weather deck, a boatswain's mate was performing routine maintenance on a deck fitting. He heard the rotor noise, looked up, watched the SH-3 pass at close range with the measured interest of a man watching slightly unusual weather develop. The helicopter was close enough to read the tail number. He could see the pilot through the cockpit glass. He considered this for approximately 1 second. He waved. Not the wave of someone who considers the situation concerning. The wave of someone at a harbor who has spotted a tourist boat passing slightly too close to the dock. Technically noteworthy, briefly acknowledged, immediately forgotten. Then he went back to the deck fitting. The paint was not going to chip itself, and the helicopter was the bridge's problem. In the CIC, the TAO noted the second approach vector forming and picked up the radio. Bridge CIC. Track India 477, conducting second approach. Estimated CPA 180 meters, bearing 310. No change in threat classification. Continuing to monitor. The officer of the deck acknowledged with the inflection typically reserved for routine navigation reports. He was not alarmed. He was annoyed, specifically about the incident report. Every close approach by an IRGCN asset required documentation. Documentation required time. He was going to be filling out forms until watch turnover and the wardroom coffee was already approaching critical. The second pass was closer. 180 meters off the port beam, 150 feet altitude, the SH-3 decelerated to roughly 60 knots as it passed amidship. A deliberate, provocative loiter. The crew was attempting to generate a visible reaction from the destroyer, a course change, an emergency maneuver, some evidence of American concern that could be filmed and transmitted. What they filmed was a destroyer maintaining course and speed with the interest level of a vessel that has been watching routine maritime traffic for 11 weeks. What they could not film was the Aegis combat system running continuous engagement solutions against their aircraft. Not because anyone intended to act on them, because that is what Aegis does at all times. Running solutions the way a good accountant runs projections, automatically, continuously, without requiring specific direction. At any moment during those passes, Aegis had active computed solutions using the SM-2MR Block 3 standard missile, the Mk-45 5-inch gun, and the Mk-15 Phalanx CIWS. 3 systems. 3 solutions. None executed, because the ROE threshold was not approached and the TAO was drinking cold coffee. For reference, the SM-2MR Block 3 travels at Mach 3.5 in terminal phase, pulls 33 G in the terminal envelope, and has a range of approximately 90 nautical miles. An engagement solution would resolve in under 8 seconds from authorization. The SH-3's maximum dash speed is 144 knots, roughly 166 miles per hour. Mach 3.5 is approximately 2,660 miles per hour. The Aegis system is not faster than the SH-3 in the sense that a sports car is faster than a bicycle. It is faster in the sense that a photon is faster than a sports car. 43 separate engagement solutions were computed during those 2 passes. The SH-3's crew had collectively one available option: execute the flight plan and trust that the Americans were as patient as advertised. The Americans were. They had paperwork to do. The munition that could have resolved this in 8 seconds cost $1.8 million per round. The SH-3's current assessed market value, generous estimate, given the rotor blade hours and the disconnected warning indicators, is approximately $350,000 to a museum acquisition buyer. Employing an SM-2 against this aircraft would be the operational equivalent of using a nuclear-capable delivery system to resolve a parking dispute. Technically decisive. Proportionally absurd. The Aegis computed 43 solutions. Bayros, the boatswain's mate, resolved it in 2 seconds with a wave. The 3rd pass did not happen as planned. The SH-3 configured for a 3rd approach, and the electronic picture changed. The EW officer caught it first. The APN-130's pulse pattern had become irregular, consistent with power supply instability in the transmitter module. The approach track showed minor deviations inconsistent with deliberate maneuvering and more consistent with a pilot managing instrumentation that was producing contradictory outputs. In the CIC, the watch logged the erratic approach geometry and continued tracking. On the helicopter, the right seat crew member was on the radio to the IRGCN frigate, unencrypted. On the primary coordination frequency, with the SLQ-32 recording every syllable. The transmission that followed was an operational masterpiece of candor. The crew member reported in sequence that the navigation radar was producing intermittent returns, that the cyclic vibration had increased since the 2nd pass, that an engine temperature indicator was showing an anomalous reading, and that in his personal professional assessment, executing a 3rd close approach with the navigation system in its current condition involved a level of risk the mission parameters had not accounted for. And then, this is the moment that caused the EW officer to physically set down his clipboard and give the speaker his complete attention. The crew member mentioned in what appeared to be a genuine aside to his colleague that he had not eaten since the previous afternoon. The ship's galley had served something he did not consider edible, and upon return to the frigate, he intended to file a formal complaint with the mess officer. On a single recording, the SLQ-32 had delivered a comprehensive system assessment of IRGCN helicopter maintenance standards, an operational risk evaluation authored by the crew themselves, and a formal culinary grievance. Log the mess hall complaint too, the EW officer said after a moment. Future analysts will want the full picture. The SH-3 broke away, executed a wide turn west, and began its transit back toward the IRGCN frigate at reduced speed. 35 minutes airborne. 2 close approaches to a U.S. Navy guided missile destroyer. No influence on the Laboon's course, speed, operational posture, or crew morale. Track India 477 was marked Departed Area. The TAO reached for his coffee. Someone needed to start the incident report. He decided the coffee came first. Now let us talk about money, because money is where this story achieves a particular level of absurdity. Maintaining SH-3 Sea King helicopters in flight operational status in 2025 is not cheap. Sikorsky discontinued the type decades ago. The parts market is conducted through surplus auctions, third-party brokers, and considerable optimism. The cost per flight hour, accounting for the improvised maintenance required to keep the aircraft technically airworthy, likely exceeds its original 1973 acquisition price many times over. The U.S. response, maintaining course and speed, operating the Aegis system, which was running anyway, running the SLQ-32, also running anyway, logging the encounter, standing orders, beginning an incident report, also standing orders, cost, in direct marginal terms, approximately nothing beyond what the Laboon was already spending to exist in the Gulf on a Wednesday morning. Every sensor that tracked and assessed the SH-3 operates continuously. The marginal cost of monitoring this specific helicopter on this specific morning was effectively zero. The intelligence collected during those 35 minutes, the full emissions profile of the IRGCN helicopter detachment, specific to the degraded maintenance state of this exact aircraft, the communication frequencies, the unencrypted voice coordination, the navigation radar fault parameters, and the mess hall complaint, was formatted and distributed via Link 16 to Combined Maritime Forces Command before sunrise and reach Pacific Fleet by morning. The IRGCN spent real money to give the U.S. Navy a free intelligence update on their own capabilities. Within hours, Iranian state television had the footage. Objectively, it is reasonable material. The Laboon is clearly visible, hull number readable, Aegis arrays prominent. The SH-3 flew close enough that the photography is genuinely good given the age of the camera equipment. Someone in Tehran with video editing software and access to a library of dramatic orchestral music had been waiting for exactly this type of content, and they did not disappoint. The broadcast described the operation in terms that were, let us say, spaciously interpreted. The IRGCN helicopter had conducted a close surveillance operation against an American destroyer. Accurate. The vessel had been monitored at close range. Technically accurate. The crew had demonstrated the readiness and resolve of the Islamic Republic's naval forces in defending regional waters. And here we begin diverging meaningfully from the evidentiary record. What the broadcast did not mention? That the SPY-1D had the SH-3 on track before it cleared the frigate's flight deck. That Aegis computed 43 engagement solutions during the approach. That the navigation radar malfunctioned on the third approach and the crew aborted. That the entire electronic package was distributed fleet-wide as an intelligence update before sunrise. That the EW officer had a more detailed technical assessment of the helicopter's systems than the IRGCN's own maintenance department had. That the boatswain's mate waved. Iranian state television showed close-range footage of a U.S. destroyer with voiceover describing American vulnerability and Iranian naval capability with dramatic music. The framing was professional. The gap between that narrative and the actual operational record was large enough to park the frigate in. The Laboon's morning watch turned over. The Gulf smelled like exhaust and brine. Nobody on board was aware that they were, at that moment, featuring in an Iranian news broadcast as evidence of American strategic weakness. They would have found this considerably funnier if they had not been finishing the incident report. Here is the strategic reality the morning broadcast elected not to address. The Persian Gulf in 2025 is among the most densely monitored bodies of water on the planet. Every aircraft, every radio emission, every radar pulse within approximately 400 nautical miles of a U.S. Navy asset is logged, categorized, analyzed, and stored. The IRGCN does not conduct an operation in this environment without contributing, involuntarily, to the U.S. Navy's knowledge of their capabilities. The SH-3's approach yielded a current emissions profile of the APN-130 in its specific degraded condition, more valuable than nominal specifications because the nominal specifications describe a helicopter that no longer exists. What exists is this aircraft with its specific fault set, its specific frequency drift. That profile is now in the threat library. Every Burke-class ship in the Gulf has it by breakfast. The unencrypted communications produced a current communication security assessment. No encrypted voice, predictable frequencies, clear coordination in the open. In a different tactical environment, that assessment has immediate operational value. The mess hall complaint has been filed under additional remarks. For completeness, Track India 477 was closed and archived with the notation WAR, contact departed area. No engagement executed. Intelligence package collected and distributed. Somewhere in the northern Gulf, on the deck of an IRGCN frigate in the early morning heat, the SH-3 is being inspected by a maintenance team informed of the navigation radar anomaly and the engine temperature fault. They will identify a worn connection in the APN 1308's power supply harness. They will note the required replacement component is not in the IRGCN's current inventory. They will file a discrepancy report that will travel to a procurement office that will attempt to source the part through third-party channels. The only channel available for a component discontinued by a manufacturer that has not produced this aircraft type since before most of the current crew was born. The helicopter will fly again. The crew that flew tonight is not without skill. Operating a 46-year-old helicopter over the Persian Gulf at night, at close range to a vessel objectively capable of resolving the situation in under 8 seconds, requires a form of professional commitment that deserves acknowledgement independent of the broader tactical context. The broader tactical context remains what it is: an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, an Aegis combat system with 43 computed engagement solutions on file, an SLQ-32 suite with a complete electronic biography of the aircraft now in its threat library, a maintenance team that finished their shaft seal work before the helicopter arrived, a morning watch primarily concerned with incident report formatting, and a boatswain's mate who waved, went back to work, and by breakfast had entirely forgotten the helicopter existed. Iranian state media will spend today turning 35 minutes of professional indifference into a statement of historical significance. The footage is real. The individual facts are technically accurate. The picture those facts assemble is not the picture of what actually happened. A museum-grade helicopter broadcast its full electronic signature to a billion-dollar sensor array, gave the U.S. Navy a free intelligence update, malfunctioned on its third approach, and went home. The incident report ran 4 pages. Under Assessment of Threat, negligible. Under Intelligence Value, significant. Under Additional Remarks, contact waved to by boatswain's mate during the second pass. The SH-3's navigation radar is still broken. The boatswain's mate already forgot about it. Bye for now.